Hello, Rowan here. This is the back of my car. Welcome back. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my car. Welcome back to another tarot video. Today we're doing another tag. This one is only 5 tarot decks. So let's say that my house was on fire and my husband grabbed the cats, grabbed the laptops, grabbed all the important documents, and as he was running out of the house with all of these things in his arms, including his musical instruments, he shouts back at me, "Honey, grab the tarot decks!" These are the 5 that I would grab. To be clear, these are not the same as my favorite 5 tarot decks. These are just the ones that, if my house were on fire, I would say are the most worth saving. And this was a tag that was originally started by A Riffle in Time. I say started by, she borrowed it from BookTube and we're using it in TarotTube now. So let's talk about my 5 favorite decks. They're not really in a particular order. I guess we should probably begin by saying that all of these are going to be independent decks except for one. And that's not because I think independent decks are better than mass market decks. It's just because mass market decks are easy to replace and less financially painful to replace. So all of my choices except for one are indie, and the only reason they're not all indie is because I only own 4 indie decks. Actually, I only own 3 indie decks, and then I have one option that's out of print and one option that is mass market and in print. But if my house were burning down, it's the one that I would pick because it's the one that I want to keep. Of the ones that I have, it's the one that I would want to have on hand. So let's get started. The very first deck that I would not leave to burn in the flames, the very first deck that I would throw myself into the fire to save, is Ithel Colquhoun. I'm definitely saying her name wrong. Tarot is Color. This is an independent deck from Folger Press. It's from the UK, I believe, and it costs, with shipping, it costs around $100 to get this. This was a gift from my husband, but because he's my husband, I know how much it cost. But this deck is absolutely stunning. It's huge, as you can see. The cards are very large. The backs are nothing to write home about. They get the job done. But what is really important about this deck are the faces. So this is a deck entirely of paint. No scenes, just abstract art. This tower is amazing. You'll see at the bottom, the Lord of the Hosts of the Mighty. I believe those are the Golden Dawn titles for the cards. My preliminary research tells me that that's what those are. Although, to be fair, when I say preliminary, I do mean it. The Prince of Swords. Let me show you one of my favorite cards from this deck. This one looks like chicken. I'm sorry. This looks like a raw chicken leg. Let's see. My husband constantly makes the joke. It's the same joke every time. This is a beautiful tarot deck, but why is it full of pictures of my parents fighting? Ha 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 ha. Let me see. This deck has some of my favorite cards for several. Let me see here. Oh, here's one. The High Priestess. This is one of my favorite High Priestess cards. I love the texture that is here with the way the colors are bleeding together. I think this is a fantastic High Priestess, and something about it just really speaks to that secrets that are being kept kind of energy. This idea that you don't know everything yet, but you're about to. Like, really like that card. Let's see, where's the other one that is one of my favorites? Let's see here. Oh, this is one of my favorite Hierophant cards. I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure how this is the Hierophant, but it is. It just is. This says Pope. This says Majesty. This says a rotting, I want to say industry, but that's not the word. A kingdom that has been long-standing, and you stand at the hilt of it, but it's maybe not as powerful as it once was. The Magus of the Eternal. I love this deck. It's really difficult to read with. I'm not going to lie about that. Anytime I pull out this deck, this strength card is amazing. This is one of my favorite strength cards too. Anytime I pull out this deck, I have to spend time with it. I cannot just sit down and do a quick reading, get my answer, and move on with the day. This is a deck that requires meditation. It requires contemplation, and it requires just kind of being with the cards. So this is the Tarot of Color. This is the first of my 5 decks that I would save should I have to. And again, I would like to remind you, these are not the decks that are my favorite of my decks. These are just the decks that would be hardest to get again. So Tarot is Color. We'll go ahead and set that off to the side. Let's see. Let's go ahead and talk about the mass market deck that's in my collection that I would replace, or that I would not want to replace, I should say. And it's not for the deck. It's actually for what I use the deck for. And that is the Rosebud Tarot. This was independent, but it did come out mass market. Oh, my box is messed up. I like to have my boxes all go in the right way, and this one is not. So it goes this way, and this way, and this way. So here are the backs. This is a stunning deck. I love it. I do wish it were a little bit easier to shuffle. It's smaller than standard tarot size. It's the exact same size as the Hush Tarot if you have that one. But it's a little bit on the small side, but because it's standard tarot cardstock and it's smaller, it's a little bit stiffer. It's not as difficult to shuffle as the Hush Tarot, as you can see, though mine's already got a little bit of a bow in it. And something that's really interesting about this deck is the guidebook. Look at that. Like, it gives you full entries for the major arcana. It's got blurbs, and then it has a poem. So this one says, for the mage, which is the position of the magician, to be spirit made flesh is to be spirit made crafter. Tangible hands touching creation, the pulse of the cosmos, heart beating a rhythm of magic, of mastery within, the elusive borderlands of reality. Will you acknowledge your agency? Will you remember your role as the bridge between the unseen and the precious ephemerality of incarnation? Like, that's just beautiful. Does it tell me anything about the card? Not really, but it's really pretty, and I like reading it. So this is not a deck I would recommend for a beginner because the guidebook is so obtuse, but it is a deck that I would recommend for anybody who enjoys poetry and likes to challenge their understanding of the tarot. Some things to know: this deck does change the names of the suits, so it's not cups, it's water, it's not wands, it's air, or it's not swords, it's air, it's not wands, it's fire, and it's not pentacles, it's earth. So we've got those elemental associations, and then the court cards are also changed. So you have the curiosity for the page, you have the velocity for the knight, you have the generosity for the queen, and finally you finish off with the sovereignty for the kings. Now, I really like the renaming because I feel like this tarot deck has given me a brand new understanding of the pages. Especially, it has helped me out with the knights. Calling them velocities has really helped me to understand that the knight cards are all about the actions that we take and what we choose to defend and protect. And I really like this. It's not particularly helpful. The poetry for the minors is very small indeed, but I do love this this guidebook nevertheless. Now let's actually talk about the cards. Why would I save this from a burning building? Why this mass market deck? Why, of all of the ones that I have, some of which were gifts and sentimental and this, that, and the other, why is this one the one that I would save? Well, because this is the deck that I use for goddess work. So I use this deck to get answers or ask questions of goddess energy. I do have another deck that I use specifically for dark goddess workings with Hecate, and for shadow work, but this one I use for any sort of goddess work, whether that's Diana, Aphrodite, whether that's Artemis or Hecate. I can use this for all of those. And I do not just read for myself with this deck, I also read for others if they have a question that I think, or if they are the type of person that I think would benefit from guidance from Goddess. Love this curiosity of, or generosity of water, the way she's completely submerged in her own intuitive emotional understanding. So good. Yeah, this is my deck that I use for any sort of goddess working. This is the Hermit card in this deck. This has changed the name of a lot of the major arcana as well. So now the Seeker is the name of the Hermit card. It's one of my birth cards, so I thought that was worth pointing out. I like that it doesn't go with the standard heart for the Three of Air or the Three of Swords. It's just a woman crying, and this can be read the way that I like to read the Three of Air, which is a little bit more in the numerological way, where it's a development of understanding brought about by hard times. So, but yeah, that's the Rosebud Tarot, and why I would keep it. So that's my mass market choice. Next, we're going to move on to what is technically another mass market choice, but this deck is both sentimental and also out of print, so I would not risk losing it. This one does not, I don't keep it in its box, so I would definitely lose the box in the fire because I'm not going to go back and grab all the boxes for things, and that would greatly lessen the value of this deck, but I don't have this deck because it's worth a lot of money. I have this deck because it is worth a lot of emotion. This looks very similar to one of the bags I showed in the last video, where I showed my daily driver, or my everyday carry deck. This is in the same fabric, but it is a different bag, I swear to God. But let's open this bad boy up. This was the first tarot deck that I ever had, and this one was a gift from my mother. This is the Art Nouveau Tarot, and it is different from the Art Nouveau Tarot that's currently out on the market. It's not the golden Art Nouveau. As you can see, it's just Art Nouveau stained glass style for the minors, and then when you get to the majors, you get this highly detailed, intricate drawing. See, there we go. And this deck was gifted to me by my mother. This was the deck that she used when she was in college exploring her witchy side. And while, as far as I am aware, she no longer practices, she did pass this down to me when she found out that I was getting into tarot. And I love it. Look at the backs. So this is a very Wiccan deck, I have to say. I mean, she probably bought this in the 90s, back when Wiccanism was the default form of witchcraft, so I'm not surprised. But it's also very, let's see, heteronormative centric. I love this death card. That's one of my favorite death cards. It's one of the few standout cards in the deck, in my opinion. Not that it's an ugly deck, but it's just a little weird, I have to say. It's a weird deck. So, like, look, here's the Seven of Cups. How is this the Seven? Focus, please. How is this the Seven of Cups? In what universe is this the Seven of Cups? But if you read the guidebook, there's a story that goes through for all of the... Okay, I'm making this way more complicated than it needs to be. So all of the minor arcana tell a story from Ace to 10. They tell a story that follows a man and a woman and how they relate to each other. So it's very heterocentric in that all of it is men and women. Like, even that's a man with long hair. You can see he has no breasticles. But this this deck tells a story for each of the suits, and it's like, if you get to know the vague story that's being told, it's not detailed. Like, the suit of coins is just about a man and a woman coming together to build things, and the trials and tribulations that they face while they try to build. Like, look, Six of Coins. Oh, she needs his help. She can't do it on her own, kind of thing. And It's quite frankly very difficult to use this deck for anything other than romance readings. It is so good. This is a good Tower card. It is so good for romance readings, though, because all of it is centered around a man and a woman. Even if you're reading for queer folks, you could absolutely use this deck for those romantic readings. And it would not be good for polyamorous readings, I will say that. Oh, and another thing to know, let me find an example. Here in the Page of Staves, I don't know how clearly you can see, but in the background, there's sort of like this bird-like design. You can see these look a bit like cardinals. And let's go to... There's a better example of it. I just know it. But the deck does switch around the associations for the swords and wands. So in this deck, the wands... Oh, what a good hermit. Ugh. The wands are air, and the swords are fire. Because this was my first tarot deck, that did throw me off for quite a while, but I've got my stuff sorted out with regards to that, and we're hunky-dory. But let me see. We probably already passed the card that I'm looking for, which is the King of Swords, because there's salamanders all behind him for the sword suit, and salamanders are traditionally, like, look, this is fiery. The Ace of Swords, we've got some salamanders down here. We've got the flames, so it has switched the elemental associations, which is a bit of a bummeroony. But that is this was originally published by US Games. It is out of print now. I've seen it on eBay for about $130. I would not pay that much for this deck, quite frankly. It is a fun deck. It shuffles really well, but again, it's very heteronormative. It's very difficult to read anything other than romance for a man and a woman with this deck. But I love it anyways, and I would save it 1,000,000 times over because of what it means to me. So the next deck that we're going to talk about is probably... Well, these are both my favorite decks. I've got two here, and they're sort of in matching bags, as you can see. They're not matchy-matchy, but they're similar-ish. And let's start with... let's start with this one. Since we just did an out-of-print deck, this is another out-of-print deck. And this is an indie out-of-print deck, so it's double as special to me. And this is the 7th edition Jonasa Jaus. Mine is signed. I think they all may have been signed, but I'm not positive. I got this on eBay, so I don't know for sure what it was like to buy it. I'm pretty sure that I paid approximately double for this what I would have if I had bought it while it was in print, but because it's an independent deck from Spain, it would have been expensive to begin with. I paid about, after shipping and everything, about $180 for this deck, which is more than anyone should pay for a deck of cards, but I like it. It brings me joy. So let's take a look. Here are the backs. As you can see, this is a tall, skinny deck. It's very slender. It's very traditional in shape. And Jonasa Jaus's decks are based on the Marseille tradition of tarot rather than the Rider-Waite tradition. However, the decks themselves are by no means Marseille in style. They are pippish. They are slightly scenic. And they are stunning. Jonasa Jaus's decks are just to die for, and I want to get my hands on the Stunning Tarot next, but I'm not stressing over it because this one is just my deck. This one just speaks to me so clearly, and it does make me stop and think because the associations on these cards are different than what I'm used to. Some of them are similar, like this 8 of Swords is very similar to what I'd expect to see in a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But there's just something different about it that makes me sit and contemplate. Like the 2 of Cups here. We have a loves me not sort of picked off flower here. And we just have a woman. Like not 2 women. Not a man and a woman. Not 2 men, just 1 woman and a couple flowers. And so I kind of have to get a little bit creative with how I determine meaning from these pictures. And because of that, this deck speaks very clearly, but it speaks in an accent, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, I can very much so understand the vibe of what this deck is trying to tell me, but I have to slow down and have it repeat itself every now and again. And I love that about it. It's easier to read than tarot is color, but it's still got that quality of, are you sure that you're done reading? Because it really makes you think. This Pope card, the Hierophant, this is the Hierophant for the deck, and it just gives me such guide vibes. I love it. There are some cards in here. Oh. Let me just get this put away. I don't know where the camera cut me off, but I was just saying that this is an independent, out-of-print deck, and I would save it thusly. Yoink. Set that aside. And now for our final deck. This is probably my favorite of my decks. It's got so much pizzazz, it's got so much spunk, so much spark, and I would definitely save this one from a burning building so that I don't have to buy it again, because I've already bought this one twice. This is almost out of print. This is the Zeke's Arcana. This is an independently produced, look at that pink gilding. And on the back you can see the foiling there as well. This is an independently produced surrealist pop art deck that utilizes a very limited color palette and a very spacey perspective of the tarot to tell its story. Julia Rich, I can't remember her last name, but I'll definitely link her Instagram down below. She's the artist who made this deck, and it was for sale for about a year before it went off the market, and she will no longer be offering it, which is a bummer. So if you like this deck, go out and get it now, or you're going to be paying Jonasa Jaus prices for it. I'm pretty sure at this point it might be gone from her website, but I think you can still get this deck on Tarot Stack if you're in the US, and other resellers might have it available. I actually, believe it or not, I found a used copy of this deck in a local occult shop that I frequent, but at that time I had already ordered my new copy of the deck, and so I didn't need to buy somebody else's used copy. Anyways, the reason I've purchased 2 copies of this deck is because my first copy, I think I may have gotten, this is one of the extra cards that comes in the deck, by the way. It comes with 2 extra cards, the Maker and the Patron. I think when my original deck was sent to me, I may have gotten an unfinished copy because there was no seal on the deck. Like, this deck is pretty matte. You can see there's hardly any glare on it, but I swear to you, the first copy of this deck that I received had the mattest finish I have ever felt on a deck of cards in my life. It was so matte. It was like cardboard. It really was like cereal box cardboard levels of matte. And I can only assume that's because it didn't have a cure on it or a laminate of any kind. And when I shuffled it, like, I riffle shuffled that deck, and you'll notice here the embossing on the back, it's a straight line right through the center of the card where it's a textured embossing. You can feel the indentation in the card stock. I don't know if you can see it, but you can feel it. And because it was unfinished, it lacked that extra support on the front and back of the cards. When I shuffled it, it creased. It didn't do it at first, but after just a couple of weeks of riffle shuffling it, all of my cards had creased right in the center. And so I passed that deck along to my brother-in-law because he also reads tarot, and I bought myself a new copy, which I no longer riffle shuffle. If I want to shuffle this deck, I do what I call water shuffling. I do either hand over hand or what I call waterfall shuffling, where you just sort of, you don't push, you just let them fall. As you can see, it does not get you a good shuffle. It does come across chunky, but it lets me think that I'm riffle shuffling it when my body starts going through the motions. And I almost bought a third copy of this deck. As you can see, the bottom of mine has a fair amount of damage. That's because I spilled water on all of my tarot decks, and of all of them, the deck that I hated the most and the deck that I loved the most were the two that got water damaged. So that's just the way it is. So that is Zeke's Arcana, and that brings my 5 decks to a close. So we have the Tarot is Color, we have the Rosebud Tarot, we have the Art Nouveau Tarot, we have the Jonasa Jaus 7th edition, and we have the Zeke's Arcana. These are the decks that I would say from a burning building. Two of these decks are my favorite. One of them is a workhorse, one of them is purely sentimental, and this bad boy probably wouldn't even save it because I like reading with it. I would save it because I want to hang it on my wall. Yeah, those are my choices. I am going to make another video that goes through my top 5, or rather my burning building, save them, please don't let me be without them, oracle decks, but that'll be later, so that'll be a separate video where I go through just 5 oracle decks, and quite frankly, it was a little bit embarrassing to realize I had enough oracle decks that I had to choose which my top 5 were. Hee oof. Anyways, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Once more, this is Rowan here, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please leave your top 5 decks down below. What 5 decks from your collection would you feel you needed to save? Or you can tell me what your favorite 5 decks are, because quite frankly, I'll probably make that video eventually anyways. A big shout out to A Riffle in Time for making this tag in the first place, or rather from stealing it from BookTube. Or Book Talk, I think is where she got it. Not like it matters. It's all the internet anyways. But thank you so much to A Riffle in Time. Thank you so much to anyone who watched this. I hope you all have an amazing day. Mwah! Bye!